Imagine trying to build a continent-spanning railway without any steel. For the British Empire in the 1800s, that essential building block was wood. Millions of trees were required to lay tracks across India and to clear land for massive new tea plantations. But from the perspective of colonial officials, the forests were shrinking too fast. People cutting trees for local use, combined with private contractors chopping down whatever they could find, created a chaotic system that threatened the empire's timber supply. This photograph shows the intense labor required to keep the trains running. The British needed uniform, heavy, durable planks called sleepers to hold the tracks in place. Local workers in the Singbum forests manually converted massive sow logs into these specific, usable pieces. The British realized that if they wanted to keep expanding their infrastructure, they couldn't rely on wild, unregulated nature. They needed a strict system to control and harvest their most vital resource. To fix this, the British government brought in an outside expert. In 1864, they appointed a German botanist named Dietrich Brandis as the first Inspector General of Forests in India. Brandis looked at the deeply intertwined local ecosystems and saw inefficiency. He believed these wild spaces needed to be measured, controlled, and managed strictly by the state, backed by the force of law. The state took over the woods, turning local lands into a centralized extraction system. This diagram illustrates a system Brandis introduced, formerly called scientific forestry. Scientific forestry is a system of cutting trees controlled by the forest department, in which old trees are cut and new ones are planted to ensure continuous timber yields. Here is how it worked in practice. Officials surveyed the land and calculated how much wood different trees could produce. They planned exactly how much to cut down each year. Once a section was cleared, it was immediately replanted, so it would be ready to harvest again years later. The goal was to create an infinite mathematical loop. Instead of treating the forest as a complex living environment, the state began treating it exactly like a massive, highly predictable agricultural crop. This new efficiency came at a steep cost. Natural forests are diverse, filled with hundreds of different plant species that local communities relied on for food, fuel, and medicine. That diversity was intentionally erased. This photograph shows the visual reality of that erasure. It is a view down an aisle of a managed forest, where the wild undergrowth has been replaced by perfectly straight lines of uniform trees. It looks more like a factory floor than a woodland. Foresters prioritized specific species, like teak and sal, that provided hard, straight wood for ships and railways. This image shows how the system was applied in India. Single, commercially valuable species were planted in strict rows at a deodar plantation in Kangra. The state actively eradicated natural biodiversity to build highly efficient, single-purpose timber factories. To manage these changes to the landscape, the British passed the Indian Forest Act of 1865, bringing the land firmly under state law. An 1878 amendment sliced the landscape into 3 rigid categories: reserved, protected, and village forests. Reserved forests were strictly locked away, legally barring villagers from taking anything. Protected and village forests offered some access, but were closely monitored by colonial officials. These acts codified the state's power over the land. By enclosing the forest, the government turned centuries of traditional use into a criminal act. The local impact was immediate. Communities who had lived on these lands for centuries found themselves classified as trespassers on their own territory. Everyday practices like grazing cattle, collecting medicinal roots, or gathering firewood became crimes punishable by the forest department. This leaves us with an important question. Did the rigid rules of scientific forestry actually protect the natural environment, or did they merely redesign it to serve the economic machinery of colonialism?